All right, it's time to talk basketball. I'm Jose Salviati, editor at thepeachbasket. He's Steve Purciello, a longtime high school basketball coach, educator, vice principal, and athletic director. And this is the 13 Rules Random NBA Thoughts podcast, the best 15 minutes of NBA random thoughts online anywhere. If this is your first time listening, as always, thank you. We're grateful that you found us. This podcast was born out of the content in Steve's Random NBA Thoughts articles. He publishes them weekly. Steve and I have exactly 15 minutes to discuss what's on his mind around the NBA. Today, we'll discuss his latest 13 Rules Random NBA Thoughts article with a focus on the now completed NBA Conference Finals. Lots of interesting stories came out of those two series. Let's talk about it. Steve, you ready?
Ready.
Let's do it. I'm going to start the timer now. All right, it's going. All right, we'll start in the West. The Minnesota Timberwolves are going home. What do you think about Karl-Anthony Towns' future? You called him an enigma, right? What's his future in Minnesota? And what did the media do to Ant that you thought was unfair?
Well, first thing is with Towns, I think they're going to come back with that group. However, I think if they don't get off well and they struggle, he'll be on the market. I think it's very apparent. I think he's and I go back and I can remember in Kentucky, and I thought this guy was going to be the greatest thing ever. He comes into the NBA and I don't know quite what happened to him. He shoots threes. He's a pretty good shooter, but you know what? When the real game comes, he's not always there. He gets in foul trouble. I think when he walks out of the locker room, he's in foul trouble. He's always in foul trouble. So it minimizes the amount of time you can use him. I'll be honest, he doesn't look like he's in great shape. But then all those negatives thrown together, you come up with game 4 the other day. And down the stretch, he hadn't done anything. Down the stretch, he bangs in a couple threes and puts the game away for Minnesota. To me, that's the walking definition of an enigma.
Right.
You get frustrated, you want to give up on him, and then he pulls you back. Now, Anthony Edwards, I think he's a good player. I don't know if he's a top 5, but I think he's one of the top 10 players or 12 players in the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
Well, everybody wants Michael Jordan to reincarnate.
Right.
It's just not fair. Just not fair for someone to talk about him or even mention Jordan in the same name. Michael Jordan, people have to understand. Not since I don't know when, we will never see a guy like that again in our lifetime. I mean, Michael Jordan was incredible. If he didn't walk away from basketball those 2 years, a year and a half, might have had 2 more titles.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Right.
Now, not many people come close to that. And I'll say another thing. Edwards is a great player. He's not yet a great shooter. He's up and down. Jordan just he just beat you and just banged away, hit anything. Again, not fair to him. He's a talent, but he's going to get better. But it's just not fair to even mention him with Michael Jordan.
Yeah. No, I love what you said about we're just so anxious, I think, excited. I don't know what the right word is, to see another Michael Jordan, that you just, you put that moniker on somebody right away. And I think what Ant did to get him there is he has that Michael Jordan attitude, right? I think that cockiness, right? Confident cockiness. But he doesn't yet have, that game. I mean, Michael Jordan, people forget, he got demolished by the Pistons for years. He had to go through the Pistons to be who he was, right? And he didn't get there until he was, it was later in his career. So, yeah, it's tough. It's tough. You can't not do it because we want another Kareem. We want another Magic. We want another Larry Bird, and we want another Michael Jordan. But, it is unfair. I agree with you.
When Boston was in their heyday with the Bird Group, they played the Chicago Bulls and a young Michael Jordan. Go back and look at the stats. I believe he hit for 70-something or something ridiculous. in one of the games. I think Bird, who has a right to say he's one of the best 5 ever,
Yeah,
called Michael Jordan God after the
he
game.
did.
You know, so when if and Edwards, I hope he does, because the NBA needs it.
Yeah,
But when Edwards does some of the things Jordan does, I'll be the first one to say this is Jordan-esque.
yeah. Nice. All right. And Karl-Anthony Towns, Supermax extension kicks in next season. He is signed
50 million.
through, 27, 28. That's an expensive contract, but a lot of people like that guy. So I agree. I think there might be, especially if they falter at the start of next year, there might be some movement there.
Well, it's a lot of money. They've never gone in the tax, Minnesota.
Yeah, of
And
course.
and they have an ownership problem right now, but
Right.
this could be the first time. And you know what? When they go there, they're not going to be happy about it. There's one other interesting side note to this. Minnesota wants Glenn Taylor, who's right now the owner, wants a new arena. If you trade Towns, you're not as good. When you win, you get your arena. So that's a little piece that people have to think about.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, it's tough. I mean, we have that problem here in Los Angeles, but we're not going to talk about it with the Clippers. Let's talk instead, because we got a limited amount of time and we got more great topics, man. And we don't want to talk about the Los Angeles Clippers. No offense, Clipper Nation.
I know. If it was the Lakers, we would.
I'm not even going to deny it. The Pacers lost, but gained the experience that you said could help them get back to the Eastern Conference Finals. Because we just talked about Jordan having to go through the Pistons. You got to lose really most often, before you can get to the promised land. So the Pacers lost. What are their key moves in the offseason to get back to where they were this season?
I think the first thing is they have to re-sign Siakam. Second thing is they have to make sure Halliburton is healthy. This year, Halliburton got hurt in January, and he should have stayed out. He came back, and for a very interesting reason. The reason he came back quickly from that hamstring was because he wanted to play the 65 games so he could make one of the 3 all-league teams for the money.
Yeah.
Now, all of a sudden, when he came back, his numbers were not nearly. He was dominant in the first part of the season up in January. And all of a sudden, he became human. That's something that they have to keep him healthy. Now, I think they can use another player of somebody else that can get them over the top. But I think they're real close. And I think they're dangerous. But I also think the East is getting better. The Knicks are going to be trouble. Boston will be good. Philadelphia, if they get the right person, they're in this thing. I mean, Milwaukee, Giannis, if he's healthy, they're trouble. So you've got a lot of teams. And it's going to be very difficult to get back into that conference finals. But I think they will get better as a basketball team.
Yeah. Yeah, you and I have talked about Tyrese Halliburton in that kind of that line of demarcation, right, between when he was otherworldly and just kind of average. And I remember watching him. I mean, he was making the kind of assists that you just don't see in a regular basketball game. He was seeing the game, just a little bit differently than everybody else, and that changed. Yeah, unfortunately, but hoping for the best. I think we need a good team in Indiana. Speaking of good teams, how's that for a segue? The Dallas Mavericks. All right, we're going to talk about our predictions in another show, but I predicted against the Mavericks. I picked them to lose every round from the first round on. I'm shocked that they've gotten this far, but their talent's undeniable. So I got to ask you, their trades that brought in PJ Washington, Daniel Gafford this season, Kyrie Irving last season, you called that one out specifically. Is that among the best and most impactful trades in NBA history, or am I overselling it?
I think we're overselling it. For this year, it's great moves. I think that the beauty of the moves, like here, Boston bought in Drew Holiday. Well, that's a no-brainer. Everybody knows he can play.
Yeah.
And he's a very good player. The beauty of these moves were, if you think about Washington, he wasn't always even starting with Charlotte. If you think about Gafford, he was on Washington. which, not a good,
Says it
not a
all.
good team. So what they did, understanding you've got Kyrie, and we'll talk about Kyrie in a second, but you understand you got Kyrie and Doncic, you want to fill around him. So what did they do? They brought those two in, and they have been perfect role players for him.
Yeah.
He selected Lively, but the biggest thing he did, which is really a big thing, was taking the risk to get Kyrie Irving.
Yeah.
Because Irving, let's face it, he hasn't been the choir boy in his life. And you're gambling, and what if his ego comes up with Luka and he doesn't like what's happening? You're really gambling on this one. And you know what? Maybe Irving has seen the error of his ways and has realized play basketball. Nobody cares about the other stuff. And he's going out and doing it. And there's a real respect between him and Luka. They really seem to like playing together.
Yeah.
And it's almost like going to a concert and seeing a band play. For a couple minutes, the lead guitar goes, which is Luka. And then for a couple minutes, the organist or somebody else plays. That's Kyrie. And then, it's almost like they take turns on and off.
Yeah.
But they really, really are great players together.
Yeah. Undeniable. I'm just curious, what band features an organist, man?
The Allman Brothers.
Okay. We had one ready, so appreciate that. I thought you were going to go with drums or bass guitar. But
we could talk about the Grateful Dead with the drum solos, but let's talk about the Allman Brothers with the greatest blues voice of all time, Greg Allman. So Let's just put that aside. But Let's go on. We'll do music. We'll do anything you want. Go ahead.
Let's stick to the game right now. But I'm interested. Lastly, we're going to talk about the team representing the East, the Boston Celtics. They're 4 wins away from their 18th title. You said these finals, and this blew me. I just blew my mind. I could not believe you said it, but then you qualified it. You said these finals are more important to their stars than it is to the Mavericks stars. Why? And then it's two-parter. You also cautioned Boston's fans to be nice to Luka. Why?
Well, first thing I'll say is it's a simple thing, and it's just common sense. How many titles does Boston have in their years? They're tied with some other team. I don't remember who, but I believe it's 17.
Yes, sir.
And how many does Dallas have?
They got one. Dirk Nowitzki, yeah.
In Boston, there's an expectation.
Yeah.
And for Tatum to become deified, such as like Paul Pierce and Garnett, they have to win a title.
Yeah.
If Tatum walks away from Boston at the end of his career and doesn't win a title, he's almost going to be looked back upon, not too fondly.
That's
so
rough.
It's a lot different than it would be in Dallas. In Dallas, when this year is over, they'll be talking about the run Dallas has had this year. Yeah. And that'll be the big thing. Well, Boston had a run 2 years ago. Nobody talks about it in Boston. They lost. So nobody talks. It's disappointment. For Dallas, if they lose this series, my goodness, look, they came from nowhere. So it's a whole different game in Boston. And it's about titles because they are the flagship team of the NBA. There is no other team that compares with them in the NBA.
I just feel like that you're baiting me. I'm not going to take the bait. I agree with you 100%.
Now, the thing Boston doesn't want to do is get Luka riled up. It seems like every time he got riled up, he went crazy. And you want to keep him happy, cheer him, and just do all the nice things because he's got the ability, almost Larry Bird-esque or Kobe-esque, that he can change a game. And these Kobe and Larry Bird were pretty good. And I think Doncic isn't there right now, but he's on his way.
Wow. We just got done talking about how unfair it is to Ant to compare him to Michael Jordan. And you just threw out, I've never heard this before, but I like it. Luka as Larry Bird? You think there's some similarities?
I think he's on his way. He's got a long way to go. He's got to win a few titles.
Yeah.
But I think he and he's got that clutch gene. When games are on the line,
Yeah, right.
He's incredible. I've watched it over the years, and those are all good things. Thing about it is, you got to win. You got to win a few titles, and then we can begin to talk. I think Bird had 3, Magic, what do you have, 4? And Kobe had what, 5, 4, so he's got to do that to get in the conversation. But what a great player.
Yeah. Wow. I had to research a little bit because I get what you're saying and I agree with it. So certainly the expectation in Boston is different than anywhere else, certainly different than it is in Dallas. But Jayson Tatum, man, in his time, 2 finals appearances, conference final, lost in the first round, conference final, semifinal. I mean, he's made the playoffs every season since he's gotten there. And yet, if he doesn't win, they're going to look at his era as a failure. That's rough.
That would be great for a player who played on the Knicks. But you playing in Boston, and I think going way, way back, Bill Russell kind of spoiled him. And that's why it's titles or nothing. And don't forget, now Boston hasn't won a title in a couple of years. The city.
Right.
But look what you got. Probably the best football dynasty, since the Green Bay Packers or Pittsburgh, with Boston, with the Patriots. I mean, look at it. The Bruins have not in that way, but they've done very well over the years. I mean, every one of those teams, and the Red Sox, since they broke the curse in 2004, what do they got, 3 or 4? So they're used to winning, and they expect winning the whole thing. I picture in some way it might be like that in Los Angeles with the Lakers.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt, right? There's no doubt. It doesn't make it any less unfair. You just feel for somebody like Jayson Tatum, but it's understandable. And it's just as difficult as it would be to lose because of all those unmet expectations. It's going to be extraordinary if he wins, because all of a sudden he's elevated, right? He is Paul Pierce. He gets a season pass to Boston games, every game for the rest of his life. He is.
So would Jaylen Brown.
Yeah.
They both would. And they would be heroes forever in Boston.
Heroes forever. That's the payoff.
Paul Pierce comes back. They sit him at mid-court, right on the court. They take care of him. They love him. I mean, they really go wild. Another person that will be beloved would be Al Horford. Old reliable. He's always been reliable, and he would become another hero in Boston.
Okay.
There's a whole bunch of them, but go ahead.
Yep. So much riding on this for Boston. We'll see if they crack under the pressure and Dallas steals it, or if they go ahead and get number 18. I'm excited. It's going to be a fun finals. That's it. You heard the buzzer go off. We talked over. It's kind of what we do, but still 15 minutes-ish. Make sure to read Steve's entire article. We'll make sure to link it below to get his thoughts on other things related to the Eastern Conference Finals. Thanks, as always, for listening. We're so grateful you found us. Please consider subscribing. Join us next week on the 13 Rules NBA Random Thoughts podcast, the best 15 minutes of NBA Random Thoughts online anywhere. We'll talk next week. Thanks, Steve.
Take care.